Hello, hello. Welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, and with me, as always, is my man, Seth Price, over there down in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Timbuktu. Where's BluShark going to open, or where's Price Benow's going to open next? Do you have any expansion plans? I
You
know I'm just
know,
dropping a bomb on you, but,
well,
you know,
it's funny you say that. I mean, one of the things, we were talking offline about like what are the trends we're seeing where
right.
local is it. And I think that I am seeing more and more like, for years I heard SEO is dead, long live SEO. And it's not that SEO is dead, but that local has been where the intersection of actual cases is coming from in mass. So
Yeah,
that as you see stuff, and I've been talking about this for years, like the Moneyball concept, once you find a location where you can find talent that has reasonable deal flow, there's population with limited competition, you sort of, just hiring a person is not always enough. Now, if you have an operation going, you have the marketing, great. But if you're using search, the idea that it's putting people where the potential business is, and that's what I've been focused on, is thinking about, okay, there's a criminal need in Chicago because that's underserved. If we put an office here, okay, and it's frustrating from a recruiting point of view because as we go around the country, we're looking at somebody right now in Knoxville of all places. The idea is if you can put people where there's need, that's going to comport. Now, the flip side is you go with, a regional brand like J. Ruane, and there you're going to gain some benefit because of that overlying brand. But when you're relying upon search, if you go to a place that's already stacked with people in Connecticut, it's going to be much harder to
sure.
move in. You still have a very authoritative site. You add some reviews, you're going to be there. But the idea that you can pick up business strategically. So to me, it's not where am I going to go next? Like I want to be there. I've tried places where I looked and I'm like, I thought it was good. And you go there and it was stacked and we couldn't make a move versus going where you see great opportunity.
So let me ask you then: is there sort of like a magic number, a bottom number of reviews that you think that a person needs to have to actually show up in the like? Is you'll show up in the map pack if you have 10 or 20, or is it like you can show up if you have one?
Well,
If you're
no,
like,
it's not that so much. There are two factors. One, 10 is sort of a magic number with Google, right? Like less than 10, more than 10. It's the only number that I've ever heard that has any significance. But
okay,
I think
good to
what it
know.
comes down to in the way we sort of look at markets and something we've got really sophisticated BluShark was with low, medium, and high competitiveness. And looking at two things. One, what does it take to be competitive? If you're going to have 12 reviews and there are people with 250, 300, and
Right, you're just
400,
not going to.
it's not going to click the same way, both from a showing point of view and a conversion point of view, right?
Right.
So you got that. The second piece is being honest with yourself on your ability to generate reviews. If you're a J. Ruane juggernaut who talks to everybody and your carpet installer is leaving your review, the woman who sat
Yeah.
you at the table is leaving, all of that, great.
I
God
got my
bless.
tonal delivered the other day, and I got a review out of that guy. I threw him a nice tip, and I got a review.
Absolutely. So the flip side is I remember I was on a call with three middle-aged white guys from, Westchester, and they had 17 reviews amongst two different offices. And I'm like, they're all married, they all have kids. I'm just like, it blew my mind. So I think you need to look at what's realistic for you, where it is to you have the authority of your site, your brand new site, different than if you have a very established site that Google sees as authoritative, and then layering in those locations. But if you're layering it, if you say, hey, I want to be in Tampa for PI, and there are multiple people with 4 figures of reviews or more, that's not going to work. And then the question is, can you find some land? It's like, almost like you're a frontier settler. Can you find yourself a plot of land that you're not going to get attacked on, that you're going to have a little bit of stability? So you hate the word depends, but it is we look at high, medium, low, then what the authority of your site is. And then we look at, is this person even going to have any shot? Past performance, no guarantee of future results. But if you've been in business for 15 years and you have 40 reviews, there's a good chance you're not going to do 200 in the next 3 months.
Well, and that brings me up a good point. From my understanding, is that Google, in has been collecting data on us for decades now, and if you have 40 and you get 200 in 3 months, they may throttle those and not even post them
Oh,
because it's an abnormal.
correct. So
It's
obviously, I was going with an extreme, but like I talked,
right,
don't spike. If you we and again, we saw this from that glitch a few months back. Somebody who did a spike, they did 100 in like a few day period. Now they did come back, good news, but it's very clear. Just like you had your issue with the people at an offsite mastermind, it's very clear that Google sees these patterns and they want it cleaned up. Think about it. We're talking about the fact that their juggernaut traditional SEO business model is under attack with AI. Their proprietary local adds value that right now the AI can't. And if it did, it'd be giving you some nonsensical Yelp or Bing. It's giving you sort of a review, grouping that is not necessarily as impressive for choosing what you want. Like if you go on Amazon and you see a bunch of items with 3 and 7 reviews, somebody just threw it up there because they're trying to either mask something or game the system. Whereas if you see something with 10,000 reviews, even if it's a 4.3, you know that it stood the test of
it's
time.
been bought. Yeah.
So I think that Google is fully incentivized right now to protect this territory because this piece of the market is going to be a lot harder for AI to infiltrate.
Yeah, I'm curious, how Google responds to AI. I mean, I'll have full on conversations with ChatGPT on my way home from work. I got a 25-minute commute, and I'll figure out what topic I want to learn about. But then at the end, I'll always throw in, hey, who's the best DUI lawyer in Dallas, Texas? Who's the best criminal defense lawyer in Roanoke, Virginia? And I'll just see who's coming up, and then I'll ask, what resources did you use to generate that? And they're pulling from Justia, they're pulling from Avo, they're pulling from directories. It
Right,
seems
which we saw Google do for a period of time. Remember when they were showing
right.
those first and foremost until people realized they're not necessarily a great user experience, in which case right now they're just looking for an answer. Over time, they're going to look for better and better answers. But it's the irony that internet brands bought a fine law and presumably super lawyers with it. They now are owning some of that data, which is all pay to play. I mean, Avo's
Right.
pay to play. So what are you left with? So Tim Stanley, really smart guy at Justia, wouldn't surprise me if they end up being one of the winners in the space. But to me, we're I have seen good success. I don't know how much money is being made, but you can't if you want to show up in the AI results. That is a doable thing right now. It's just a moving target. We don't know where it's going to be in 3 months.
So where would you invest? Where would you invest? Would you invest in some of these directories?
No, I mean, I
And
think it's the concept that SEO, right? Search engine optimization used to be, hey, I just care about the Google algorithm. Now you're trying to kit the ChatGPT algorithm or anything else. And you're just basically looking at where are they pulling from or what type of format are they looking at. It replaced essentially the rich snippet of before. We had a number of
gotcha.
clients that
Okay.
they wanted the rich snippet. That was to them the brass ring. This is the new rich snippet, although not nearly as monetizable, in my opinion. That's the downside. It's interesting and it's good, but is it now? Just like when you're doing radio or TV, is branding. Are people going to then call the person that it says there, or is that their research and they're going back to a Google search for the actual purchasing decision? Again, it's moving, but it's definitely keeping an eye on it. But there's an entire art to figuring out where they're pulling from, and that at the moment is transparent enough that it's not some multi-page secret algorithm or leaked algorithm now that Google had. Like it's right now it's in infancy, and we're able to see, just like you were able to say, yeah, this is mostly Justia, or hey, they're looking for this answer. Let's give them the answer so that we can be there for this.
Yeah, one of the things that I did recently with ChatGPT deep research was actually ask it to go into the Reddit forums for Connecticut and find out what questions kept coming up in relation to criminal law that weren't being answered, so that we could use that as a format for creating new content. And so it provided me with a spreadsheet of like 150 topics that had consistently come up and didn't have a lot of responses. And we figured that would be a way to sort of create content that people are asking about, over the last 3 or 4 years. I think we limited by time. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to focus on in the third and fourth quarter is creating, and it may be niche content, like it may be 1 or 2 pages or blog posts or a video or something like that. It's not necessarily going to be a whole content silo, because these are very specific questions, but I think we can answer them and capture those searches.
I mean, it's funny. Jay is now doing SEO all over again, the way he did 20 years ago.
Exactly. I mean, I can remember we were just cleaning out our storeroom, and I used to have, and now this is like 2002, 2003. I had a binder for MSN. I actually, they still have, it was MSN, Yahoo, and Hotbot, I think.
You didn't have Alta Vista, did you?
Oh, definitely had Alta Vista.
Did you really?
And so I would put in, I would run the same searches in each thing, and then I would print out who was first, and I would try to like reverse engineer why are they ranking higher than me and all that stuff.
Ironically, this would be a great LinkedIn post. I should remind myself to do this. So I was with a group called US Law. This is before Price Benowitz. It was, early days of the internet. This is started in the late 90s through 2000. And, it was basically what became LegalZoom today.
Okay.
It was competing to try to create that. And I was out in Silicon Valley, and we had venture money, and we did a deal, I believe it was with Alta Vista, to be the homepage law button. If somebody wanted law, we were it. And I looked at this deal, and I thought this was nonsense. The amount being paid, there was no way we were going to monetize it. And I sort of bowed out and let this other guy at the company run the deal, because I'm like, I did not, like, I knew enough to know, A, I didn't know how to lawyer this, and B, these guys, they're going to a casino and think you're going to beat the house. And sort of the deal ended up hamstringing the business, so that when the bubble burst in April of 2000 and money stopped flowing, it was, the company became upside down. That was a big part of it. And so the irony so when I look back on that, one of the great things is there were a lot of options, but it was harder to sort of figure out what was going to be successful. If you bet on the wrong horse, then you were paying too much money, then, you would be upside down. And that was the end of that. So fascinating times.
That's interesting, because obviously the idea of something like LegalZoom or US Law, the idea was solid. The execution, the market timing,
it was more that. I mean, again, you need bandwidth for video. But
right. It was the same thing with Cosmo.com. I used to love Cosmo, sit in the city, and you could get what you wanted. I'd get Entenmann's ice cream. My buddy would get a pack of smokes, and it'd be at the apartment in 20 minutes. And that was great until it flamed out. But now you got Uber Eats and DoorDash, which is doing the same thing. They just had, the idea was great. The execution needed to be different, right?
I smile. Probably shouldn't say this publicly, but a girl that I really liked, I'm talking to her on the phone. She had too much to drink, and she dropped her cordless phone. We're dating ourselves.
Yeah, you are old.
To a place where she couldn't grab it. I literally urban fetched her a new phone and a pint of Ben and Jerry's to continue the conversation.
Wow,
that was a time. Yeah, but look,
that was desperate, Seth.
it was at a point where Amazon has come full circle to the point where a lot of stuff is available on short notice, and more. So look, it was bandwidth, it was the appetite. Lawyers would get into arguments with you. Our sales team would call up and say, "Do you want to be in our directory?" And people, nobody's ever, like Dave's famous words before he started the firm, nobody's going to find their lawyer online. We got 50
Right.
lawyers that tells them otherwise. It was a different time. The cost of acquisition. We were advertising on radio to bring lawyers to advertise online, and it was, again, and bandwidth was a big deal. If you go back to the early days of dating apps, I met my wife on JDate, but like there was a period where there weren't photos, and then there were
Right.
photos, but not everybody uploaded them, and then there were no, videos were very, very tough to that was part of the issue, that the fulfillment of legal information or downloading of documents, people didn't have, you had that AOL dial up at one point. So as that evolved, you were able to get more and more value to somebody.
Well, that brings up then the question that what ideas do people in our audience have using AI, maybe using AI agents, where the idea is solid, but the ability to execute and the consumer isn't necessarily ready for it. I think now is an opportunity for some really creative people to sort of establish themselves and push the envelope. And yeah, you may not get it right on the first go round, but the losses and the ability to code and do things now is so much cheaper than it ever has been before.
It's funny because people are saying, I listened to a podcast with Jason Calacanis and his friends, and they were saying that in one sense, a lot of jobs would be lost with AI. And I'm sure they're right. They were making the point that the ability, the leveling of the playing field, that if you want to create, when Jay has one of his crazy ideas, he now, prior to AI, or what did have to hire a whole team of coders and get it built out. And it would take, now, in theory, you can self-execute on some of your ideas. And that, as AI, helps building out with coding, that you're going to be able to do things you could never have fathomed before. So that piece is very cool. There are pieces that I'm really excited about, efficiencies and things that we were going to be able to get to. It's just very hard to wrap your head around, where does that end? Where on the continuum are we?
Well, and that's one of the things. I don't think it ever ends, type of thing. Like it's
Right.
one of these things
Right.
where
But meaning,
like
if that's the case, is it a short-term arbitrage, or is this the new normal, or where are we on that continuum? So yeah, it's not going to end, but are we right here? Are we further down? Like how much more impactful? And you get the impression, the way it's changing right now, we have no idea where it's going to end.
I really don't. I mean, I was talking to some friends. We have been approached to help with some immigration detention hearings, and we're like, yeah, but these people, they get, they're in detention. They don't get access to a phone till 2 o'clock in the morning, and they have to. And so we developed an AI agent they can call into. We'll ask them questions in their native language, translate it, and email it into the lawyer who's going to be available to do the intake and be able to argue on their behalf. And we couldn't do that if we had to staff 6 or 7 different language speakers 24 hours a day, but we can do it with AI, which is phenomenal. But I wanted to, before we go, I want to talk to you about a question that came up. Somebody texted me, an old friend, someone I haven't seen in years, and the question was this: they're hiring, they have a current associate, and the number one candidate is the associate's fiancé for a law job. And I am nervous about that. I want to know what your thoughts are, because if you've got a married couple in your employ in the same role, I don't see anything
Different pods.
That I don't know. I didn't get that follow-up
How
question.
large a group it is. Look, history is written by the victor. There are things that you take a shot at. We brought on a couple at the firm. One is exiting, and that just, if anything, brings risk. Will the other one exit? But I also know that if somebody's moving to a new city, there are times when that can be that package gets you in the door. I mean, like, it's a discussion we've had on a different show, as far as like somebody moving from another city comes with a whole bunch of risks. This comes with a bunch of risks. If they are people that work great and don't have a lot of drama, that's awesome. But know that you could end up losing 2 instead of 1 if things go the wrong direction. Given how hard it is to bring in great talent, I feel that very often for the small and medium-sized firms that make up our audience, there are times you take a shot at it. It could be your
Yeah.
superpower. Again, you don't want to be stupid about it. But, if it gets you a year and a half of building your firm in a way that you're like, because for many of us, this is the frustrating part that we don't always focus on in recruiting. The reason why people talk about tests and this and that about in the hiring process. And I've, again, remind me, I want to talk, culture index, predictive index, if you have any thoughts on that. But here, it's not like this person saying, hey, I have 8 people to choose from. Do I take her or not? It's an opportunity. And
Right.
so to me, when the opportunity knocks, answer the door, I think I would lean towards it. It sort of reminds me of a life moment when I was a baby lawyer, and this guy sits me down in his office, a mentor of mine, says, "What do you think about the firm's nepotism policy?" And I'm like, "I don't know, just as long as I get paid each week, you do whatever policies you want." And he was an equity partner, and he started to date one of the senior attorneys at the firm, and there were questions about whether that was right or not. And to me, as a peon, I didn't care. There's a level of risk. You have conflicts of interest issues, and you got to take those seriously. But in general, history is written by the victor.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. My uncle was with Donovan Leisure at Rockefeller Center for years, and working on a case. Met my aunt, who was a paralegal in the D.C. office. He was working a case and was constantly going down to D.C. They started dating, and he was pulled aside by his managing partner that was in charge of his division, and said, "I know you're on the partnership track, but partners don't marry the help. You're now off the partnership track, Bill. Now that you're engaged to the paralegal down in DC, you're not gonna make partner here. We don't want to give the help the opportunity to think that they can marry a
Well,
partner."
I mean, like to be
Right.
fair, that
I mean,
was
this was
well.
1980s.
The flip side, look, we saw this.
firm in New York City.
You're old enough to remember the Clarence Thomas hearings. I mean, my great uncle married his nurse. You see this all the. It is a. So here, let's bring it back to your
Right.
situation, which is generally everything's fraught with peril. You're getting staff and you're getting talent who hopefully love it and stay and work, but you also come with risks and potential how it's viewed. Like, what's the reporting line? If you're large enough to have 2 different pods and there are 2 different people in the office, until this person made an exit from our firm, we had 2 people that I love both of them. This is one of the, those few exits where you don't want to lose somebody. And look, for all I know, they liked it until they didn't like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's great and it's awesome because you commute together, but at some point, as relationships build and grow and things change, there may be something where somebody says, you know what, I'd rather not see somebody all day.
Right. My thought was, and this lawyer that reached out to me is a little older than I am. If these are new people, this is a possible good succession starter. If you bring people in who want to take over your firm.
Look, to me, that's taking the next step. The question is, can you live to fight the next day? Forget about like 10 years from now. The question
was it Casey Stengel who said, I don't care who's pitching tomorrow. I got to win today's game type of thing. Like, we'll figure out tomorrow.
Yeah. And so to me, you're literally who's pitching today. And if this person is good at middle inning relief, that's not easy to find. And it's, look, there are like, and it's just making sure that you're not creating other conflicts within the firm. And that's always what I'm wary of, is that there's now a unit or a block.
Right. Because their allegiance is going to be to each other before the firm if they're married.
Right. It comes as a block, as is everybody's at some level. But, the idea being that it can be viewed, and I've seen it navigated well. I saw it navigated well at BluShark. But, there are times where, and I think if you almost, you talk about all these testing, if you get the biorhythm, are these people with decent biorhythms? Okay, maybe I'll take a shot because they'll be humans, but it's the perception of others. Do they perceive somebody getting favored treatment. If this person is coming in, the second person, and there's a bunch of people at that person's level, are they going to feel that those other people are disadvantaged because they don't have it? That's the issue.
Yeah, that just comes down to your culture and how you integrate them, and how other people, the expectations. I think that, you just got to be intentional about it.
And right, it can be a huge win, but it also could be a huge disaster.
Yeah, but that's the life we've chosen.
Exactly. So
All right,
very cool. So am I going to see you? I'm going to see you tomorrow.
I'm close to being able to pull the trigger. I got to reach out to John and see if there's a seat for me.
Well, I will, if I have to, I will, as you know, the ADHD, I'll just walk around and give you my seat. You can sit. I'll just pace the room.
Yeah, I got to reach out to him later today so we can line that up. But folks, that's going to do it for us this week on the Law Firm Blueprint. Of course, I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price, and we love spending this time with you. You can take us anywhere you need to be, on the go, in your car, sitting at a courthouse, or on the beach, whatever you're fancy, by subscribing to the Law Firm Blueprint podcast. Of course, you can catch us live every week, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, live on LinkedIn, and also live in our Facebook group called The Law Firm Blueprint. Kind of see the branding there. But that's going to do it for us, Seth. I got nothing else. Anything you got?
No.
All right.
Hopefully, I'm really distraught with the Knickerbockers, but time.
Well, the bench, they finally played the bench and got some points out of them. So maybe we've got a new strategy going into Game 4.
Maybe, but three in a row, not going to be easy. Nothing is easy.
Nothing is easy. That's the one thing that should be the name of the podcast.
I think we should at some point we should rebrand to Nothing's Easy.
That Nothing's Easy with Seth and Jay. I like that. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Bye for now.